Can the Vanderbilt Commodores win and become a viable competitive program with no true star power?
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton, champion of the Lawson High School Bracket Challenge. On this episode, there's a very interesting question for the Commodores or any team in this position for that matter. I'm sure if you're a team that's in this position, you could probably ask yourself the same thing. You have no superstars or few stars and the rest are good players. Can you win in this league? I'll tell you why you can in a bit. However, Vandy may have some guys whose stars on the rise. Who are those guys? Lastly, we're going to wrap up by doing the stat dive that I was unable to do on the last episode. We're going to answer the question, what is going on with the Vandy boys? Pitching is elite, and hitting is, for lack of better terms, a roller coaster. And that's been a problem some weekends, not so much other weekends. So we'll look at the stats, see kind of what the trends are, and see kind of how they can fix it. If there's any sort of lineup changes or anything for that matter that they can do. But we'll dive into that here in a little bit as we wrap up the show. So thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, speaking of bets, FanDuel has a bet. They have Vandy at 4.5 wins. That's 2 more wins than they had them at last year. So a little bit more respect, but still, it's, I said in a previous episode, it's still a prove it year for Clark Lee. And one of the things he's going to have to prove is that, hey, we still have no real star power. I mean, Diego Pavia, and that's really kind of about it as far as like the closest thing to a superstar, but you have no superstars. Diego Pavia is not a superstar. He's a star. He's not a superstar yet, right? But here's the thing. And here's why I think Vandy does have a chance. Because if you look at the way the roster was built last year, you look at the overhaul, the way the operation has changed made a massive difference. Was it like college football playoff level difference? No. But the overhaul that Clark Lee did on the program made a massive difference from the way they train, from the way they ate, from the way they traveled, the way they practice, the way they recruit, the way they scout in the portal, the way they participate in the portal and NIL. Changing the operation did a lot of good. When you have a solid run operation from the top all the way down to the student assistants and equipment that are setting up the drills, like anything in between it had to be cleaner. It had to be more efficient. And it was, except for the Georgia State week. But just changing that alone was good for one win, right? It was good for one win in the right direction. They had to do a lot of other things right to win 7 of them, but that, I think, alone just gave you a confidence, just gave you the feel that you are a real program, right? I don't know what they did before. Obviously, whatever they did before didn't work, or Clark Lee would not have overhauled the system. But doing things differently worked in this scenario, right? I think the first thing with that is the psychology behind we're doing things different. We're improving. We're being more efficient. It just gives you more confidence that you don't have to worry about those types of things. As a head coach, you don't have to worry about those types of things as an assistant, as the director of scouting, as the director of equipment, or as the director of sport, whatever your position, whatever your title is. There's things that were put in place system-wise that you didn't have to worry about anymore. And it just made you able to do the things you needed to worry about better. And that alone, like I said, made some significant change. Now, The thing I think stands out with Vanderbilt, and I think what they've done and what they're continuing to do is when you don't have the star power that, say, a Texas or a Georgia or an Alabama or even that team down the road that wears that ugly color, right? Even if you don't have the talent level that they have, like the superstars that they have, right? You can still win. There is ways, because teams like SMU get into the granted, they play in the ACC. It's probably a little bit easier of a road, but still, like, they give themselves a chance. Like Indiana goes out and beats Michigan. And, when Michigan was still considered a really good team before they kind of fell apart. Ohio State gets beat by, they get beat by Michigan. They get beat by Oregon. There's teams that win these games against these bigger names. Then there's teams that are successful, maybe not to the college football playoff level successful, but like success in college football can be, a range of different things. I think what made Ole Miss really good, what made them a team that now is being, in the conversations of college football playoffs, what made South Carolina get to that position. Because South Carolina, they have like very little star power. Like, I don't think collectively they have a ton of star power. I think they have Dylan Stewart. They had those two NFL guys on the defensive end, and they had Lenore Sellers, who really wasn't a star until late in the season. They did it with scheme. They found scheme fits that worked, right? The reason why Vandy beat Alabama is because the scheme and the game plan, they executed it to perfection because they had confidence in it, because of the systems that were put in place to make it to where they could focus on the game plan. They built those things throughout. They won that game well before that game because of everything that was put in place. The scheme, the commitment to their offensive identity that they have, their commitment to their defensive identity, the game planning, the play calling in the game, the personnel. Like, if you match those two rosters up, Vandy has no shot. They just don't. And everybody knows that. I think everybody would admit that. Alabama has more NFL caliber guys right at that point than Vandy did. It's a fact. Like, you can look at the draft results coming up in a couple of weeks, and that will prove some things. But that doesn't mean they weren't the better team that day. And that's what matters. Like, Alabama was not the better team that day. And Vandy got them because Vandy took their scheme, they executed to perfection, and they just wore Alabama down. They stressed them out. They were able to do things psychologically to get over the hump. And that's where teams that are less physically talented or have less deep rosters than their opponents, that's where they gain that edge. It's psychologically. It's frustrating the opponent and getting them to do uncharacteristic things. Like, you never see an Alabama team. Under Nick Saban, you never saw Alabama that flustered, except for that first year. Like, Alabama was flustered in Kalen DeBoer's first year a lot. They were able to escape some of those games, but they weren't able to escape the Vandy game. They weren't able to escape against Oklahoma. But they were flustered. And they thought they could waltz in there because they're Alabama and easily beat Vanderbilt and run away with that game. But psychologically, it didn't happen. So why do I, they were probably 3 plays away from beating Missouri. They were a disaster away from being 8-4, right? Going into the bowl game. They played great in the bowl game. But scheme goes a long way, is my point. And I think people that are downplaying that, I think are just looking at the rosters. And people tend to do that. But like, when you break down how they play, what they do, and how they can be psychologically, they've improved the roster. Okay. They went 7-6 on a not overly talented roster. Like they had one wide receiver, they had one running back that was because AJ Newberry got hurt. He was okay before he got hurt, but like it's Cedric Alexander, that was it. They had Junior Sherrill. He was the only one that was really doing anything consistently. Diego Pavia was back there doing it by himself. Their offensive line was, it was banged up. It felt like there was not the same five guys all the time. Like they were just, it was just kind of a mess with injuries and late in the season and like not used to being like, there was a lot of factors. Not saying anybody was bad. The production wasn't consistent. There was injuries. There was other things. There was, this team wasn't like the fact that team went 7-6 was outright was insanely good. That might have been one of the best coaching jobs. And that's the reason why Clark Lee won Coach of the Year, because they were that good. They were that well coached. They had identity. They played to it. They played gritty. They played tough, even if they weren't overly talented. They did all of the right things. They just tuckered out against South Carolina. They tuckered out against LSU. They tuckered out against Tennessee. They were a blown coverage away from escaping a disaster in Georgia State. They were not a blown coverage, but just a really good superstar play by Luther Burton away from winning that game against a then top 10 Missouri team. So when you look at this Vandy season, it was really good, but the feel of it would have been even better had those two things happen, and they're sitting at 8 regular season wins instead of 6, right? And that makes a difference. And not saying right or wrong or indifferent, it still doesn't discredit the way they played that entire game against Missouri. I think the Georgia State game was the one that stuck out, and you can't have those anymore if you want to be a competitive program. But nonetheless, they still went bowling without that Georgia State win. So scheme matters. And I think it goes a long way. And I think they've got the right things going on. We said that he has to prove that Steve Gregory can do it. I think that he can. He's got some pieces now, some rising stars that I think are going to be outstanding. And I'll talk about those guys in here in just a second. But this scheme goes a long way. The operation goes a long way. If you can do all that smooth, it erases a lot of emotional interference. And when you can do that, you're in a much better headspace to be able to buy in and execute the scheme. So, but just because they don't have any stars doesn't mean there aren't some on the rise. And I'm hearing about some in spring practice that you may be saying, hold that thought. We may have a few more stars on the way. And we'll talk about those guys next. All right. The NBA playoffs are almost here. Hooray. So the NHL ones too. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bets win. I don't think you guys heard that. $250 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. So I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props. I really love the player props myself. From 3-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. And if someone in the chat can tell me some good NBA props, I will love you forever. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into same-game parlays for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. FanDuel. Do it. All right, thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers and the first timers and the loyal ones that have been with me since day one. I appreciate you greatly. If you need a second listen, Locked On SEC is the place to go. If you really want to hear someone gloat about the national championship that Florida just won, Brandon Olson could be that place. If you can stand and listen to Florida Gator content, he's the one to listen to because he does it well. But I don't know if you want to subject yourself to Florida Gator stuff. However, if there's ever a host that you want to listen to do it, it is Brandon Olson. So, rising stars. I think there are some at Vanderbilt. And I think this is going to be a huge part of like taking that narrative of no stars and kind of not shoving away, not blowing it up, not blasting it, just kind of pushing it off to the side a little bit for right now. Maybe you throw it away later, but I don't think you're going to be able to say there's no stars on this team, right? Because Diego Pavia is close to being a superstar. He's very, very close. He's got all the qualities. He's got all the makeup. He just lacks the support. Because football, I don't know if you guys know this. This might be breaking news to some. It is a team sport. And Diego Pavia cannot do it all by himself. Even though there were some games where he probably actually did do it by himself. But contrary to popular belief, he cannot do it by himself. Diego, if you're listening to this, you cannot do it by yourself. So he needs support. And he needs a star to help him. And I think he's going to have plenty of them. Jordan White, going to be a star. I don't know if a center can ever be a superstar, but if there ever was a superstar center, I think Jordan White has the makeup to do it. You know, he's the leader of that offense. He's going to get everything organized. He's super athletic, can get on the next level, and can move. And when you have a center that can do that, it's dangerous. So as far as star power goes on offense, he's definitely on that list. Eli Stowers, of course, he is a star. He was a star last year, but again, when you're the only one, you kind of get shut down. But there were some catches he made. I was just like, what? So he's a star. Diego Pavia is a star. Defensively, Brandon Fontenette, star, rising star, but he's going to be one. He will be one. But who I think who's in that, so those guys are kind of they're excluded from this because they've kind of already established themselves as like they're right on the cusp or they are stars. There's no superstars in that bunch yet, but I think one of them will become a superstar. But here's the guys that I think that are going to be in that conversation that weren't in that conversation before. Keanu Koht. That dude's going to be a star. He's already raising hell at practice. You can't block him. He's going to be a star. He's going to, like, you're not going to be able to handle it. I'm very excited. If he can stay healthy, of course, I think he will be a star. I'm loving what I'm hearing about him. He's disruptive. He gets to the quarterback. He makes plays. He plays like you think an Alabama player would. And that's good. And I want to see it. I haven't laid eyes on him because I'm not available to go to practice, A, because of my job, and B, because I'm not invited. Be good to invite me, though. I think he's going to be a star. From things I'm hearing about Aaron Bryant, he's going to be a star. Somebody said, I forget which lineman said it, but they said, because they do one-on-ones and things like that, but he said somebody as big as Aaron Bryant should not be able to move like that. So that leads me to believe that he has good feet. He's athletic, violent with his hands. I mean, he was in the rotation at Texas. Couldn't quite crack the starting lineup. Probably wasn't in the rotation as much as he wanted to be. But the fact that Texas wanted him badly out of high school leads you to believe that he's super talented. He just did not get his shot, and he wanted his shot. And Vandy gave it to him with a good NIL package. So he's going to be a star. I think Langston Patterson took a slight step backwards last year. Slight. But he's going to be a star again. I think Brandon Fontenette is going to make that jump. I think I already had him in the category I pushed aside, but I think he's going to make that jump. I think he's going to be a legit star. I think Martell Height is going to be a two-way star. He's going to be a star on offense, star on defense, maybe even a triple threat, special teams as well. We'll throw in special teams. Hell, who cares? Let's throw in triple threat. Not a two-way star, triple threat. So he's going to be a star. He might be up there. I think those guys, like, they're going to play pivotal roles. Like, you can't tell me that Keanu Koht getting us off the field on third down is not going to be impactful. You can't tell me that Aaron Bryant is going to – you can't tell me that he's not going to help us be able to stop the run and pressure the pocket from the interior without getting having to use blitzes. You can't tell me that he's not going to have that kind of impact, because I think he will. And I think we've got multiple defensive linemen that can do that. Glenn Seabrooks is going to be a beast. I don't know if he's going to jump into the star category just yet. I think he's going to be a great player. I just don't know that he's going to be a star just yet. I think he's going to just need some more football ahead of him. He could break out. I don't see it right now. He's still got a lot of football to play. I think he's going to be really good. He's going to be a great player. But I don't know if he's going to be able to play enough to be able to make that kind of impact. But I'm very excited about him. Very excited about what he's going to bring. And I hope he becomes a star. I hope he breaks out. Otara, I think, has some work to do. But, like, I think we have three really good guys there on the defensive line that can really make a big, big impact. Miles Capers, like, I don't want to leave him out, because, you know, all the attention's on Keanu Koht. Miles Capers was doing this last year. Probably not as much as we'd like. Probably not as frequently as we'd like. But he was, in fact, doing this. And so, offensively, I think Junior Sherrill has a chance. But there's a chance for somebody to break out in the passing game other than Eli Stowers. Is it going to be another tight end, Bryson Coleman? Could be. He's unguardable. He's considered unguardable in practice. Is that going to carry over and translate? That remains to be seen. I think it can. Just doesn't necessarily mean that it will, but it can. And then who's it going to, like, by default, your candidate is Junior Sherrill, but, you know, is it going to be Joseph McVay? Is it going to be Trey Richardson, who committed from Division II? Is it going to be one of the freshmen that are on campus yet? We don't know. They haven't shown us yet. We may not know until the first game. Maybe we may not know until after the South Carolina game. We don't have those answers yet because those answers haven't revealed themselves. So it's going to be a work in progress. I'm very excited about it, but we're going to have to switch gears to baseball. There's a stat dive. We've got to answer some questions in baseball. Try to get to it on yesterday's episode. Couldn't quite get there, but we're going to get there next. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. Shout out to the everydayers, and shout out to you if you're still with me. So, talking about baseball, the Vandy boys. And it seems like one weekend we're talking about how bad they are, how cooked Tim Corbin is, and the games passed him by and all that stuff. And then the next weekend we're like, hey, we swept. You know, and then it's like, yeah, we get swept again. Oh, what are we doing? We can't do this right. We can't do that right. Fired Tim Corbin. I think it's time for him to move on. And then next weekend, hey, we sweep. And everything that's lost in that is the fact that we're 9-0 in midweek games, whereas we've normally dropped one or two by now. But we're 9-0, knock on wood. So that's good. At least they're taking those games seriously. They just, you know, doing the stat dive was interesting. For this, well, yesterday's episode really is what I intended it for, but we're going to talk about it now. There were some very interesting revelations that came out because it says a lot about what Vanderbilt is right now. And there's a lot of good mixed in with a lot of, this can get bad in a hurry. Like, this can deteriorate. So here's this. Here's my results. All right. Vandy's in the upper third of all major pitching categories. Number one in saves. Sawyer Hawks has been outstanding. All right, they're the middle of the pack in runs scored and RBI. They're second in triples, but bottom in most others. That's most other categories in hitting. And that shows me lack of consistency. Shows me that they're probably scoring a lot of runs midweek They're probably scoring a lot of runs in like single games, and they just go like long stretches without scoring. So like the stats may be skewed a little bit, but pitching and defense is carrying this team. But how do we fix the hitting? Like, what is it really? Because like when you look at the stats, okay, when you look at the hitting stats, here's what I see. Batting average, Vanderbilt, 15th, which means they're not getting a lot of hits. They're hitting 281, which in the metal bat arena, not great. LSU's hitting 345, right? LSU's number one. Slugging percentage, Vanderbilt's 14th, which means they're not hitting for a lot of power. It means they're getting a lot of singles and leaving a lot of guys on first base. On base percentage, Vanderbilt is 13th, so they're slowly climbing, right? But still not great. They're not getting on base a ton. Runs, somehow Vanderbilt's 8th in runs. They're scoring a lot of runs somehow, which I think is, again, some games are scoring a lot and other games are not scoring anything. They're 10th in hits, so they're getting a decent amount of hits. And they're 8th in driving those runs in, which is good. Probably happening over the sample size is kind of skewed. It's probably happening over the course of a few games. And, I don't know exactly how these stats are calculated, if the midweek games are taken into consideration or if it's just conference games at this point. They're dead last in home runs, so they're hitting for absolutely no power. They're showing they've got some speed because they have 7 triples, which is good for second behind Oklahoma. And they're tied for 9th in doubles. So the extra base hits, they're doing okay. Total bases, not great. They get them on, can't get them around. 9th in total plate appearances, so they're getting a decent amount of guys to the plate. And they're 9th in bats. Again, getting people to the plate. They're drawing a good amount of walks, which I think is making their total bases stats okay and getting people to bat. And then strikeouts, they are 7th with 172, so they're striking out probably more than they want to. And then I think the other stats are not really all that relevant. So, which leads me to believe that situationally they're not great. They're not, which also tells me they're probably not getting far enough into the counts, which they have a decent amount of walks. So sometimes they have really good plate appearances, and other times I think they just go up there flailing. They're leaving guys stranded. They're hitting a really good amount of triples and doubles. They're getting extra base hits. They're getting guys in scoring position. They just can't get them around. They can't get them across the plate consistently. There's some games where they do, a lot of games where they don't, and the record shows. So what is it? What is it exactly? Is it lack of power? Well, right now, yes, they're not hitting for power. They have no guy in that lineup that I would say if he walks up to the plate, you're hold your breath as an opposing fan, going, I hope this guy doesn't go yard. There's a couple guys who could be that guy. They're just not. There's some guys that have potential, but for some reason they're not there. There's some guys that do it occasionally, but they're just not there. Like Vastine can hit for a little bit of power, but that's not who he is. RJ Austin is not a home run guy. Hits him occasionally, but he's more of a drive into the gap and circle the bases. But like you can't have too many of those guys because you're relying on hitting and getting guys around, and you're relying on stringing together a bunch of, like, to score runs the way Vanderbilt plays at the plate is you have to get a bunch of guys to string together hits, right? Teams like LSU, teams like Georgia, they get them on and they hit it over the fence. They get those guys in with one swing of the bat. They've got power. They've got power guys. That's why they're leading in a lot of offensive categories, because they got power guys. That's why they're leading in runs. They got power. Vanderbilt has to work at it. So one of the things they can do, unfortunately, it's not going to help them this season, is they're going to have to get in the portal and find some true power guys. Mark Byington realized his weakness. He got 2 6'10" forward/centers. I think he's going to be good. Tim Corbin needs to realize that and say, I've got no power. I've got some good hitters. I just got no bombers. And that's what they need. The pitching is great. You got to support it. You have to. You have to support it with run support. You have to get those guys across the plate. You just have to. If not, you're not going to win in this league. And you're not going to be viable. The SEC is good. They're good at everything now. So you have to be able to get guys across the plate. And when you can't and you can't rely on the fact that you need 5 hits an inning just to score a run. You can't do that. You can't get walk, hit. He's around to get 2 runs on the board. Like you have to have some guys that when they come up, you just know there's a really good chance that they're going to go yard. And that's where I'm going to leave you. That's what this deep dive in the stats did for me. Pitching has been great. Defense has been phenomenal, right? Not giving up a ton of runs. Now, in college baseball, you're going to give up some, but you're not giving up a ton. Pitching's been great. Can't say hardly any bad things about pitching. It's lack of run support. Simple as that. Got to be better at the plate. Got to find some power somewhere. I don't know where that's going to be. I don't know if that's on your roster. Braden Holcomb was supposed to be that power guy. He was hitting nukes all in preseason. Brody Johnston was hitting bombs in the non-conference play. Where has he been? It's just too few and far between. So, but hopefully they'll find some power, some consistent power, and find a way to put runs on the board. And they will be fine. But that's going to wrap it up for us. So until next time, we'll see you later. Anchor down. Peace.